We're going to take care of a military pump today. This particular one, as far as I can tell, fits a Willys. Now, all the AC military pumps, I'll use this big 6-valve fuel casting. Some of them have a priming lever, some of them don't. This particular one does, and it happens to be a straight arm. Some of them are bent, and I have those all in stock. Let's get to work on this one here. If you want to order a kit for this, because you want to do it at home or in your shop, you want to call it in by number. You can see on the flange, this 9804. It can be stamped anywhere on any of these sides, but it's usually stamped on the top. First thing you want to do, mount it in a vise. Mount it by one of the mounting ears. The bolts go through to hold it onto the engine. In this position, of course, it's upside down on the engine. This vacuum side would be on the bottom, the fuel side would be up on the top. You want to remove these screws. Hold off on the last one. There's a pretty strong spring underneath here holding the diaphragm down. You take off this last screw and nothing happens. It usually means that it's stuck in here, and it can release at any second and it'll send it to the moon. So be careful with that last one. Before you get to that, you can take off this bolt here. Holds this cover down. And just note that there is a fiber washer right there, which you'll get in the kit. It's a gasket. Now the military sends out a bulletin back in the 50s. Usually there's a screen right in here, and there's a funny little metal clip that holds it down, a little retainer. The military says, why you want to filter the air? Don't use it, just throw it away. Which is what I do. And this one here, obviously somebody's already done it. It's useless. Now you can take out these screws. Now we get the last one. Another thing to watch for when you take out that last screw is all the oil that's going to be sitting underneath it. The oil sitting in here, all underneath there, and it puddles up on the top of this. And see, somebody else has been in here. Usually there's a spring seat right here, and you can tell by the top of this diaphragm that the diaphragm's been used again. Now the pull rod that this is attached to underneath has a square hole in it, and it goes through two links. In order to get it out of there, just kind of tip it back like this and turn it and give it a tug. Now you're going through the seal. That's the hole that you're going through. Oh, you're trying to unhook the links off of. Now we got more oil. By removing that vacuum diaphragm, it gives you access to the oil seal and two valves. Make note of which way these go. They both go the same way. Just put a screwdriver in there and pop them out. Same thing with this seal. What you don't want to do is pay attention to how this seal came out of this retainer. You're going to get a different retainer and a different seal. And instead of going in this position where this dome is down, it's going to go this way, the new seal. I'll show you all about that when we get to that point. I gotta clean some of this oil off so it doesn't drip all over the floor. Okay, flip it over. Clamp it again. Now, there's probably some kind of a shield that bolts onto this. I've never seen it, but I see a lot of these studs in here. It's always on the back half, furthest away from the arm. Before you take any of this apart, we want to mark some locations because we want this to go back the exact same way it is. Take a, some people take a hacksaw and scratch on the top, scratch in here. Same thing with the bottom. Run it straight down. You can take a picture of it, draw a picture of it, do whatever you want, but you got to make this go back in the same place. And we can take off these two, and you can take all the screws out. Because it's not, the spring that's underneath here is held in by the diaphragm. It's underneath the diaphragm, so it's not like it's going to send this like the other side. And it's the spring for the other side, for the vacuum, if I didn't show it to you. So remove all these screws, and you'll be able to take this part off. Once all these screws are out, as you can see, it only goes up so far, and it's stuck. Take a putty knife, take whatever you want. Go in between. It gives you access to the lower half of the valves. And then in here, this is the area where you'll take out these 8 screws, these 2 retainers, and the valves will pop out. Now you want to take the diaphragm out. Sometimes it can be tricky, sometimes it comes out real easy. You want to push down a little bit, tip it back, and scoot the bottom of the pull rod out. Okay, it's stuck. Here's my little trick for it. Hang on to this edge, tap this right in here, and it'll pop it out. It'll bend it, but it doesn't matter. There's the fuel pressure spring, and there's a little seat right underneath it. Now the priming setup, the priming lever, that's all got to come out of there. There's a screw in the back. On this particular one, there's a screw here. Excuse me. Sometimes there's a fitting, a brass fitting for the vent, and I can show you why there was so much oil up the top. You got the screw and the clamp, and as you're pulling back on this, hold on to the little bracket that holds this part in, and it's just keyed into this. Now a lot of these military pumps don't use a seal on the bottom half. They use one on the vacuum side, but not the fuel side. There was also a bulletin back in the 50s that they found out that there was a lot of oil being pumped up to the top. The reason being is, well, the fix for it, I should say, is they get you to drill a 1/8 inch hole right through this section here. And it's any oil that gets up in here, because this pump is sitting this way, any oil that gets up in the top goes right down. It runs back into the engine. So it just kind of circulates it around. Without it there, the oil will puddle down on the bottom. It'll puddle up in this area, and then as this diaphragm's going down, it's pushing the oil right straight through this and filling up this area, and then it eventually goes through the diaphragm because the oil will make it weaker, and it'll tear, and then you'll end up pulling it into the intake while pumping it up to your wipers. You don't want to do that. Anyway, this retainer's got to stay in here. Usually it's staked in. Sometimes it's just a metal ring that's just sitting in there. Just be careful, don't lose it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let it take a trip through the wash tank, and then it's going to get bead blasted and then clear coated, and then we're going to flatten out all the surfaces and then reassemble. Taking these valves out, I already told you, take out these 8 screws. The vacuum's the same way. Take out this center screw and that clamp, and the valves will pop out. It's nice that there's oil pumped up in there. And that just about takes care of the disassembly. So now I'm gonna de-oil it, and then we'll be back with some assembly. Okay, it only seemed like a minute or a second for you guys. It was over an hour and a half for me. Nice and flat. As you can see. And same thing with this. We'll do the valves for the fuel section first. Okay, in your kit, locate 6 of these little paper washers. They're going to sit under the valves. And it helps to seal them. Oop. Anyway, sit these all down nice and flat. Now put the valves in. You can see the different size holes. Ones with the smaller holes, the rivet goes up. And obviously, the other side, the rivet goes down. Make sure these sit in here nice and flat. I've come across a few times with the especially the end valves won't sit down flat all the way. They'll be caught on the edge of the casting. Put your retainers in. put the screws in and tighten them down. Once those are all tightened down, locate this diaphragm in your kit. Line up the holes. Drop the screws through. And on the two center screws. Put all the rest of them in. Tighten these two down. Alright, once all these screws are in, these are just sitting through the diaphragm, but these two here are tight. This one here is the outlet. Fuel is going to come up. Actually, it's going to go in through this side. Let's make sure that I don't have this mixed up. Alright, going to come in through here. It'll come in through here. Come in through the inside. Right in here it's marked on there, casting in. Couldn't see it. Fuel will come in into the diaphragm area. Diaphragm will go up, push it out through here, out through the out. Now if you want to do a kind of a quick test, as long as these two screws are nice and tight, you should be able to blow air in through the inlet and not suck any air out. Same thing with the outlet. You should be able to suck air out but not blow any in. It should be a dead stop, just like as if it was plugged up. That takes care of the fuel side. I would do the vacuum side really simple. This is the fix for all that oil. You take a drill a 1/8 inch hole right through this section right here. It helps drain the oil back. It helps to have a nice sharp drill bit, for which this isn't. But it got your job done. Now we want to put the priming lever in. Now what you took out on this priming lever, right up against this area right in here, there's a rubber washer. It's shaped like a cone. It's got a flat back and it's kind of cone shaped to fit in that recess right there. What I do is I get an O-ring, put a little dab of oil on the end of that, helps it go on easier. I've used the O-ring many times. Never had a problem with any oil leaking. But you can reuse that seal if you want. It doesn't get hurt. You want to slide this in. Watch how it keys in. Don't forget the clamp and the screw, and holds it from sliding out. Locate your diaphragm assembly in the spring along with the spring seat. You want to line up that slot going forward. It's easy to do this watching it from the inside. You'll push it up and hook it onto the link inside. It's kind of hard to show you while it's on the video, but you get the idea. It's inside of there. Put it back in the vise. Make sure the screw holes line up with the diaphragm. Find your locating mark. Push the screws through the diaphragm. And just get two of them caught opposite each other. Run these down about halfway. Don't tighten them all the way. And all you want to do is get an adjustable wrench, put it on the arm to give you some leverage. Pull it up all the way till it stops. Make sure you're not hitting up here. Now tighten down all the screws. You're preloading the diaphragm, which helps keep it from stretching and wearing out prematurely. And a few other things. If you were to leave it in a relaxed position, you tend to get a higher pressure reading. Your fuel pressure tends to be higher to the point where it'll push the needle right off the seat in the carburetor. Tighten down the rest of the screws. Once you get 4 or 6 of these screws down tight, you can relax the pressure on the arm. Now, if you want to do an easy test, put that adjustable back on the arm, hold your finger over the inlet, and pull the arm up. And you should feel it trying to pull your finger in. For the outlet, hold the arm up, block off the outlet, and let it go. If it drops right down, then there's a problem somewhere. If you get good section, you'll have the seal is good in here, the seal is good in here, and the plates are sealed good. You should be good to go. Now we're going to flip it and work on the vacuum side. Locate now the last paper washer. You'll probably end up with 2 paper washers left. This end here doesn't need one. Now both of these valves go in the same way. Rivet down and rivet down. Press them in. If this one here goes in really easy, there's a raised piece of casting right around this edge. Take a blunt screwdriver. Just hit it in a few spots. Just to dent the casting. It holds the valve down. This one here, it doesn't matter because it gets held in by the diaphragm. If it sticks up a little proud, just take whatever tool you use to knock this in, give it a couple of taps, and it'll push this rivet up a little bit, which is fine. It's not going to hurt anything. Put the seal in. Again, this one here, we want to dent the casting. These seals tend to lift up, the retainers tend to lift up and be isn't held down as good, but you want that thing to stay down. Take a little bit of motor oil, put it in the center, just to keep that pull rod from running dry. I'm going to push this down, tip it back, and try to hook it. It's not the easiest thing to do, but it helps to get something on the arm and move the arm up. It brings the links closer to the top. Just sit it on there and hook it. You should be able to go one of these holes, should be able to go halfway and halfway to know that you catch both links, or you caught both links. Put the spring seat on if it came with it. This one didn't, but I have some. Put the spring on. Put 2 screws in, opposite each other. And again, you want to run it down about halfway. Now stick the other screws in. Watch around the edge. Make sure that the diaphragm isn't folded up inside, as that spring pushes it down and tends to fold the diaphragm up, make it smaller, and it gets caught behind this casting. You got to pay particular attention to this side. If any place, that's where it kind of gets stuck, and this one did. Take a popsicle stick, put it in there, only because it's pretty dull, and you won't run the risk of tearing the diaphragm or poking a hole in it. Put the rest of the screws in and run them down about halfway. Now, unlike the fuel side, where it has to be preloaded, we want this side, if you see that little tab there, you want that to be flat. Once that's in the middle in the neutral position, then tighten down all the screws. That brings this one to an end. It's complete, ready to go back on and go for a ride. Put the gasket on, and that's about it. If you'd like to contact us on the web, then-now.com, by phone 781-335-8860. If you want to order a kit and do it yourself, remember, use that number that's stamped on the flange. And otherwise, if you want me to do it, it'll turn out looking like this. And that's about it. Stay safe. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, hit the little bell, and that's it.